July 22nd, 2011 started like any normal day in Norway. Calm streets, quiet routines, nothing out of place. Then, within hours, that calm was gone. 2 coordinated attacks would leave 77 people dead and over 300 injured, marking the deadliest tragedy in the country since World War II. The man behind it didn't hide. He didn't deny it. In fact, he admitted everything. But what shocked people the most wasn't just what he did. It was what he didn't feel. No regret. No hesitation. Just a belief that he was right. This is not just a crime story. It's something deeper, something more unsettling. Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into what came long before that day. Long before 2011, there were warning signs that something was not right. Anders Behring Breivik was born in Oslo in 1979. But his early years were far from stable. By the time he was just 4 years old, multiple reports had already raised serious concerns about his mental and emotional development. Psychologists observed something unusual. He showed very little emotional response, rarely expressed joy, and had what was described as a peculiar smile that didn't match his feelings. One report even stated that he had become an anxious, passive child that averts making contact. The situation at home made things worse. Reports described a deeply troubled environment where his mother's behavior was inconsistent and at times emotionally harmful. Professionals recommended that he be removed from that environment entirely to prevent long-term damage. That recommendation was never carried out. As he grew older, the pattern didn't disappear. At age 16 in 1995, he was caught spraying graffiti and fined more than once. His behavior became more rebellious, and his connection with others started to fade. There were multiple chances to step in, to change the direction early, but none of them were taken. And as those early warnings were ignored, something far more dangerous began to form. As he moved into adulthood, the isolation didn't go away. It grew stronger, and this time, it started shaping his identity. Anders Behring Breivik tried to build a normal path at first. He worked in customer service and was described by one colleague as an exceptional colleague. On the surface, nothing seemed alarming, but underneath, things were changing. At age 20, he joined the Progress Party, becoming active enough to chair a local youth branch in 2002. For a while, it looked like he was finding direction, but by 2006, he had left the party completely. Around this time, his world became smaller. He spent more time alone, focusing on his own ideas. He believed Europe was under threat and began forming a mindset where he saw himself as part of something bigger. His thinking became rigid, centered around a conflict and identity. He was also active online, writing and reading content that reinforced his beliefs. Over time, those ideas stopped being opinions and started becoming his reality. This wasn't sudden. It was gradual, quiet, and mostly invisible to the outside world. And once he convinced himself he had a purpose, he stopped living normally and started preparing for something far more serious. What makes this case even more disturbing is how long it was in the making. Anders Behring Breivik later claimed that his plan began around 2002, turning what would happen in 2011 into the result of nearly a decade of preparation. He focused on building money and access. At one point, he created a business and claimed to have made his first 1 million kroner by the age of 24. Even after financial losses, he still managed to gather funds, eventually using around 130,000 euros to finance his operation. He relied on multiple credit cards and carefully managed his spending to keep everything moving forward. In 2009, he had no declared income, yet still maintained assets of 390,000 kroner. Around the same time, he moved back in with his mother, cutting costs and living quietly. Then came the cover. In 2009, he set up a farming company, which allowed him to legally purchase large amounts of materials. In May 2011, that company bought 6 tons of fertilizer, enough to raise serious concerns if noticed. He also legally obtained weapons, including a Glock 34 pistol and a Ruger Mini 14 rifle using valid licenses. Everything was planned step by step, hidden in plain sight. By the time anyone could have questioned it, he was already ready to act. By the time July 22, 2011 arrived, everything was already in motion. Anders Behring Breivik had spent years preparing, and now the plan was about to unfold. At 15:25, the first attack hit. A car bomb exploded in Oslo's government district, right near the offices connected to the country's leadership. The blast killed 8 people and left at least 210 injured, with 12 seriously hurt. Buildings were damaged, streets filled with panic, and confusion spread quickly. At that moment, no one knew this was only the beginning. While emergency services rushed to respond in the city, he was already moving toward the next location. The second part of the plan was already set. To avoid suspicion, he wore a police-style uniform and carried false identification. It allowed him to move without raising immediate alarm. Step by step, he made his way toward a small island where hundreds of young people had gathered for a summer camp. From the outside, it still looked like a normal day, but the situation had already changed completely. What had started as a single explosion was about to turn into something much more personal and far more devastating. Because what waited on that island would shock the entire world. Less than 2 hours after the explosion in Oslo, the second attack began. Anders Behring Breivik arrived at Utøya Island, where around 500 teenagers and young adults were attending a political summer camp. Many of them were between 14 and 18 years old. Using the disguise and false identification, he gained access to the island without immediate suspicion. Then, at around 1722, the situation changed completely. Over the next 72 minutes, he carried out a sustained attack across the island. People tried to hide, some tried to escape, and others were left with no clear direction as confusion spread. The island, which had been a place of learning and community, quickly turned into a scene of fear and chaos. By the time it ended, 69 people had lost their lives on the island and 33 others were injured. Many of those affected were young, with their entire future ahead of them. Police eventually reached the island at around 1825, bringing the situation under control. But by then, the damage had already been done. What had taken years to plan had unfolded in just over an hour. And when it was finally over, he made a decision that no one expected. When the police finally reached the island, the situation ended in a way few expected. Anders Behring Breivik did not try to escape. When officers from the Delta unit confronted him, he surrendered without resistance. He was taken into custody on the same day and questioned through the night. Almost immediately, he admitted to carrying out both attacks. There was no denial, no confusion about what had happened. But what stood out was how he explained it. He claimed the attacks were necessary and described them as part of a larger mission. He said the purpose was to save Western Europe from a Muslim takeover, and that the Labour Party had to pay the price for what he believed were harmful policies. After his arrest, he even referred to himself as the greatest monster since Quisling. But the tone was not regretful. It was distant, almost calculated. He didn't express sympathy for the victims. Instead, he focused on justifying his actions, presenting them as deliberate and meaningful. The facts were clear, the responsibility was admitted, but the mindset behind it remained deeply unsettling. And as the case moved to court, the biggest question was still unanswered. When the trial began in April 2012, the focus was not just on what Anders Behring Breivik did, but on how his mind worked. The case quickly turned into a battle between two very different conclusions. The first psychiatric evaluation claimed he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, suggesting he was not fully responsible for his actions. But that finding was heavily challenged. A second evaluation reached the opposite result, stating that he was not psychotic, but instead had narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. In court, he admitted everything again, but pleaded not guilty. He argued that his actions were a form of self-defense and described them as atrocious but necessary. At one point, he even said, "I would do it again," showing no sign of regret. The trial lasted about 10 weeks, and with over 150 witnesses involved, every detail was examined, from the planning to the execution. In the end, the court rejected the insanity claim. On August 24, 2012, he was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 21 years of preventive detention, the maximum penalty in Norway. This sentence can be extended indefinitely if he is still considered a threat. But even after the verdict, his story was far from over. After the sentencing, Anders Behring Breivik was placed in a high-security prison system designed for extreme cases. Since August 2011, he has been held under particularly high security, separated from other inmates and monitored closely at all times. His daily life is controlled and isolated. He has access to separate rooms, exercise, and limited activities, but almost no direct contact with other prisoners. Even interactions are carefully supervised. In 2020, he had a rare meeting with another inmate lasting only about 1 to 2 hours, and it was never repeated. Despite the restrictions, his behaviour has not changed in the way many expected. Over the years, he has filed multiple complaints and lawsuits against the Norwegian government, arguing that his prison conditions violate his rights. In 2016, a lower court partially agreed with him, but that decision was later overturned on appeal. He has also continued to express his beliefs indirectly, writing letters and attempting to stay connected with like-minded individuals. By 2016, around 4,000 letters had been sent to or from him, with about 15% confiscated. Even after more than a decade, he is still considered a risk. His requests for release have been denied, including decisions upheld as recently as 2024. What happened in Norway was not just about one day. It was the result of years of thinking, planning, and decisions that slowly built towards something irreversible. A single individual changed countless lives, leaving behind a case that still raises difficult questions today. Even now, people continue to study how such a plan went unnoticed for so long, and how beliefs turned into actions on such a scale. This story forces us to look beyond the surface and think deeper about warning signs and responsibility. Do you think something like this could have been stopped earlier? And what should be done when clear warning signs appear? Share your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you with a new thrilling crime story in our next video. Take care.